Hello, everybody. It is July 10th, 2025, and I am doing a workshop on integrating the inner child. And why that is so important is because as adults, a lot of us don't realize how much we are actually still operating from the abandoned, wounded, mistreated, neglected child, right? Or abused, flat out abused. And when we come into the world, that is a very core imprint. We are infants. We need to be loved and held. And just think of your mother. What state was she in when she was pregnant with you? Many women are in volatile situations. They have to not only defend themselves, but now they have to defend the baby. Sometimes when women get pregnant, the men change. And now all of a sudden they have to deal with this new environment going on when everything was supposed to be fine, everything was supposed to be great, and now it's not, right? So think of those things as imprints that we absorb into our cellular structure because you can feel it. When your best friend is beside you and they are flooded with grief, you can feel their grief. When you're watching a movie, we've all done it, we've all reacted to a movie, right? And you cry as if it's your experience. Well, that is energy exchange. That's your body and your soul's way of saying, hey, I'm here. And I get it and I feel you. And sometimes it's about helping that person transmute that energy because the energy is just way too much. But before we get off track, I wanted to point that out so that you understand the energetic imprint that the pregnant mother has, your mother had on you. What was she going through before you were born? Did you have any trauma coming through the birth experience? I have had so many clients where they have gone through physical injury during their birth experience, broken limbs, head injuries, not a nice way to enter this world. Definitely not in a place of love and peace, but of pain, terror, bright lights, and literal abuse, really, if you think about it, because as an infant coming out of the womb, now you're being ripped apart. You didn't want to do that. And I don't mean that to scare anybody or to be shocking, but we have to think of these things. And I know people that have gone through traumatic births. So not only is the infant going through the traumatic birth, the mother is having a physical experience, an emotional experience. We have to, and I mean, I had a 10-pound kid, people, 9 pounds, 4 ounces. There's a moment where you go into self mode, like, okay, get this thing out of me because I don't want to die, right? And that is imprinted into our cellular structure as what does love feel like? What does our environment feel like? Okay. So then all of the things that go along with that afterwards. So let's just say you have a normal birth, but your environment at home is not necessarily perfect for your emotional growth. Maybe you had parents that were young and didn't know how to be adults, let alone parents. Um, Maybe you had to be one of the children that grew up in a place where you never knew when you were safe. And so you were constantly reading the room. We call that being empathic. And there is a place where, sorry, I got distracted there for a second. There's a moment where we have to stop reading the room. Like as adults, we shouldn't be walking into a situation and reading the room constantly. Of course, you're going to do, everybody does. We all gauge our environment, right? But the person that grew up in an environment where they constantly had to read the room to know how to be safe or to change the energy or make sure that, mom or dad didn't, and they always did anyways. It didn't matter what we did. They always were just who they were, right? So that has to stop because as an adult, I shouldn't be doing that. I should be present and enjoying myself and connecting with the experience. But I'm not because my wounded inner child doesn't know it's safe to come out. So take a moment and reflect on your own experience as a child where you may have not been emotionally supported. And that can also be a tragedy or a trauma or something, a big change that happened within the family unit or within your immediate environment where the child is left behind because the adults are trying to deal. And so the child is then left to say, I don't know how to process this, and all the adults are unavailable. And so then they go into their fantasy world, and then sometimes they split personality, sometimes they just check out, sometimes they just develop a shield, but they don't even know they're doing it. It's a coping mechanism. A quick way to recognize where you might be operating from the wounded inner child is I'll give you a bit of an example. So, for me, anyways, I realized here in the last couple of weeks, I'm 56 years old. I'll be 57 in October. And I do this for a living, and I walk my talk and I share my experience online because I want people to know that you can get through these changes. We don't have to, we're not supposed to do this by ourselves. If we could figure it out by ourselves, we would, and no, there would be no self help industry, right? So, healing the inner child is a lot about recognizing where you were left behind. Where were you not emotionally supported during an event or during an experience? And the experience can be your entire childhood, especially if you experienced outright abuse. Okay. So I'm going to give you an example that I'm allowed to tell this story. I was given permission to tell this story, and it will cover a couple of things. So see how it resonates for you. I had a wonderful assistant when I first started embarking on this journey to become the happy healer as I progressed from the bathrobe lady through the Divine Sophia phrases and now to the happy healer. And he was a wonderful young man, 27 years old, and had a natural child like one of his, and then adopted another child with his partner. He had a crippling anxiety about death. And you would think, well, of course, because he's a young father and he was, wanting to get a good job so he could provide for them. But that's not what the anxiety was. There's a normal, anxiety that comes with being a parent and what happens if something happens to me, or my kid's going to be looked after. Okay, that's perfectly normal. But his was crippling, like a crippling anxiety about death. And particularly when he would see fire trucks and ambulances. And it didn't matter if the sirens were on or anything like that. He just had to see them and he would have an instant anxiety attack. So I worked with him for quite a few months and he kept mentioning it and how much it bothered him. I'm like, you work with me. Why don't you just sit down and have a session with me? And for whatever reason, he wouldn't. And a lot of the reason is, you guys, is because we get comfortable in what we know, even if it's not good for us. So he was afraid to uncover what the actual problem was. As most people that are denying themselves talking to somebody like me, you think that I'm going to re-traumatize you by having to remember something, and that's not how this goes. Because I can almost guarantee you that what you need to deal with has nothing to do with what you went through, but the emotions that you were having when you were going through it. So at the very tender age of 8 years old, my assistant had gotten off the school bus and was greeted with pandemonium. There were emergency service vehicles all over the front lawn, fire trucks, police, paramedics. The adults were absolutely going crazy. He walks into the house and sees his teenage brother lying on the living room floor being resuscitated. Now, for anybody that's never seen a resuscitation in person, it's not what it looks like on TV, you guys. It's terrible. It's a terrible, terrible thing to have to witness. And for those of us that have ever had to do it, it is not a pleasant experience. It can leave an imprint. And not only did he have to see his brother be resuscitated once, he flatlined and he had to witness it twice. So this 8-year-old child comes off the school bus into pandemonium. He sees his brother be resuscitated, which is traumatic enough as an adult. Then his brother dies, traumatic enough as an adult. Resuscitated again. And then what happens? Well, the parents have to go to the hospital to deal with the child that is in imminent danger. The children that are left behind, they get put to somebody else's house or with a relative. And the parents are so embroiled with their own emotions, their own experience of what they're going through with this child. Oh my goodness. And unfortunately, it was over drug addiction. And as far as I know, he is still having issues, but I pray that he's gotten clean somehow. So you see, it wasn't his fear of death. He wasn't afraid of dying. He was an 8-year-old child that saw what it looked like when you do die and then they bring you back. And his little brain could not handle it. He was not afforded any emotional support because the parents were fully concentrated on the other child who now required immediate medical care and rehab. They had to find the finances for that. They were barely getting by emotionally themselves. And so as long as the other children don't put up a fuss, everybody assumes that they're okay. But they're not. They just shut down and they're just trying to deal with it, and they're trying to figure out how they feel, because they're not, how could they possibly know how to deal with something like that when the adults don't know how to process that? And that's how you end up with a wounded inner child stuck in a moment of time that affects your adult. So once we identified that the fear was not actual death, it was the experience, and why he would freak out every time he heard, a crack of thunder. That was his 8-year-old memory of the ribs cracking so that they could pound his heart. Okay. His 8-year-old brain associates that with thunder. And the sirens, of course. Okay. So once we unlock that, guess what? No more anxiety. He doesn't have that problem anymore. He just has normal worries about his own mortality when it comes to what happens to his kids and those that he loves. Right. So that's how this happens. So that's why it's important to look at these things. And if you're having a hard time identifying the inner child problem for yourself, and trust me, I do not want to re-traumatize anybody. Okay. I have heard and dealt with the worst of the worst. Okay. I highly doubt I could be surprised anymore. And then you say that, and then you always hear a story that's, more horrific. But at the end of the day, the beautiful part is that somewhere in there, in all the pain and trauma, healing is found, connection is found, faith is found, and an opening up. And in order to do that, I need to walk you through a very beautiful visualization to help bring the inner child forward. But I do not like doing that in video. That is not something I want people to do in a self-help kind of way. And the reason being is because sometimes people experience emotions through that experience that they need help with afterwards. And I don't want anybody sitting there by themselves having a realization with no support. So for now, to fully integrate the inner child, look back and realize where your inner child may have gotten stuck somewhere. And it could be an accident that happened, a lot of emotion around shame and guilt. That'll get a child stuck back in the past and turn them into a people pleaser, right? No boundaries, can't speak their truth. Nobody's listening anyways, right? So once we identify all of those things about the child that wasn't emotionally supported to become an adult, then we bring it forward. You get the confidence that you need to recognize within yourself that you're fine. You did it. You're safe right now. Aren't you? Aren't you? And if you're not, let me help you. Let's get you safe. Okay. So recognize those moments in your childhood. Be really, really gentle on yourself. And if you are willing and confident enough, you can do a short visualization where you have yourself sit in a space, have a room available, and have your inner child, the age they got wounded, the age they got left behind. And if that was like from birth, no problem. Do it in stages where somebody comes to the door and brings you the baby, and you hold yourself as a baby. And you'll sit there and you give out that baby all the love, the nurturing that you should have received. You'll know when it's done. And then you hand the baby back. And then you bring yourself in as the 3-year-old who was trying to learn how to walk. And there was nobody there to encourage you and cheer you on. And maybe you developed some sort of a walking issue for that. Then you got bullied. So you bring that child to you and you tell them how perfect they are, just the way they are. Okay. You give your inner child the love and the emotional support that you should have had. If you need any help, please come and see me. thedivinesophia65@gmail.com is the best way to get a hold of me. I am going through my own life transitions in this moment and integrating my inner child so I can step into the adult that I know I can be. And so in this moment, I'm going through my own lessons and journeys, which means I'm in flux. So if you want an appointment with me, a personal one-on-one, I also do couples, families, and groups. Please email me, thedivinesophia65@gmail.com, or visit my website at thehappyhealer.org. Also available Patreon, patreon.com/The Happy Healer, and YouTube, The Happy Healer, and TikTok, The Happy Healer. If this has helped you in any way, please consider donating while I'm trying to find my footing and find an address and find my happy place. The road to healing is a destination, everybody. It's not a lifelong journey. Okay. And it doesn't have to hurt. And it doesn't have to take 4 years. And it doesn't have to cost you thousands of dollars. Okay. So be proud of yourself for how far you have come. Follow along, share this video if it's touched you, and if you think somebody else could benefit from it. Let me know in the comments, and integrate the inner child today. Your life will get so much better instantly, I promise. I'll do a video on that next time. Thanks for joining me.